If you've ever wanted to be in control of a professional baseball team, then Season Mode is for you. Not only do you get to play the games, but you can also develop, purchase and trade players, as well as improving your staff. After selecting Season Mode from the main menu, you are given two options. You can either start a new game, or you can continue from a previous save. When you start a new game, the first thing you'll need to do is to select your team. You can choose from any of the current 12 NPB teams, or you can use the white button at the bottom to select any custom teams you've made. You're also able to add up to 2 more teams per league. Once you're happy with your selection, you'll then be asked if you'd like to play a full season or a digest version. If you choose full, you'll be able to play every single match, while if you choose a digest, the game will only let you play some of the milestone matches. Once you've made your choice, you'll then be able to change a range of settings which will affect how the season mode will work. While you can make changes here, you are also able to change them throughout the season. However, there is one setting that you can't change and must be decided here. At the very top you have the pennant race settings, and this has 4 pages of settings you can tinker with. Here you'll find a bunch of settings ranging from whether you want injuries or games to be postponed due to things like rain, to setting up how free agency works, or whether you want reincarnated or overseas players to be available. A lot of them will make a lot of sense if you're used to baseball terminology, but if you need to, you can always just pause here and take a screenshot. The important setting, which can only be changed here and not throughout the rest of the game, is the growth and decline setting. Next is the team option settings, where you can change things for each team, like the amount of funds they get or the foreign player quota. You can do this for each team, not only your own but the computer's as well. For the team fund, you can set whether you want the team to get more or less funds than normal for the end of year contract renewals, with 1 being the lowest and max being the max. The report settings allow you to change how you'll see updates regarding things like injuries, achievements and other records. At the top you have reports for games, which you're able to top between seeing them and skipping them. Next are reports for when you're skipping ahead in the schedule. For these you can choose between stopping the skip progression, see the event, or continue skipping, which is the default option. The last page is just for some random events like injuries or growth reports, and again you can just toggle these on and off. For growth though, you can choose whether you only want it to show when a player increases their rank. The match settings are the same ones found in every other mode, which I've covered in previous videos, so if you need a refresher, just click any of the links in the top right. Unlike most modes though, you can actually choose things like which ball type you'd like, or the condition of both your team and the CPU if you'd like to mess around and make things either easier or harder for yourself. And finally, the last option is the user settings, which again I've gone over in previous videos. For a more in-depth explanation, I'd either watch my hitting video or the star player video. Once you're done with all the settings, you'll start your first day setting up your staff for the year. You can either keep the staff as they are, or if you want to, you can swap out positions with other staff, players, or even your own created players. Staff can have abilities that will affect things such as training and development, to scouts finding players quicker or evaluating their abilities better. When it comes to domestic scouting, if your research ability is low, even if your research rate is 100%, you will not be able to accurately grasp each player's ability, so do keep that in mind. Staff abilities may grow or decline during the off-season, and you'll be able to change staff when renewing contracts. Once you're happy with your staff, you'll then be on the player registration screen. Here you can register which players you'd like for the first team, either using the pitching or fielder buttons. Just like in other modes, choosing either one of these will allow you to swap up players to your liking, or you can use the auto button to let the computer select the best team for you. When choosing fielders, you'll have to do 2 pages, one without a DH and one with. With the team now set, you'll now be given just a quick bit of information about how the season will progress. If you're not familiar with the NPB, a regular season consists of playing games against other teams in your league for a few weeks before the interleague games begin. After the interleague games finish, you'll then go back to playing against teams in your league in the run up to the end of the season, where the top 3 teams will advance to the Climax Series. If you win in the Climax Series, you'll then advance to the Japan Series, where you'll have the chance to be the best in Japan. Throughout the season, in order to recruit players, signing bonuses and annual salaries are necessary. All of this uses club funds. After the Japan Series ends, the team funds are allocated. You will receive an amount calculated based on your attendance rate throughout the year. The team then will use its funds to pay for the salaries of players who have signed for the next season, along with any new foreign player recruitments, trades and drafts. Keep in mind you'll also have to pay any fees that may arise, so spend the team's funds wisely. Finally, you'll be on the main screen, and from here you'll have access to all parts of your team. The first button will either take you to the next game or will advance a day. Next is the schedule screen. Here you can see the upcoming fixtures for the whole season. You're also able to skip days by selecting another day in the future. If you press square, you can bring up a bunch of preset skip options, such as skipping until the start of the interleague games all the way up to the Climax Series. Choosing either of the 2 skip options will bring up some report settings. Here you can choose whether you'd like the game to stop skipping forward depending on the situation. If you want to cancel skipping days while it's in motion, then you can just press circle to stop. Next is the team options. Not only can you change options for your own team here, but you're also able to edit other teams as well. At the top you have the player registration, which is the same as the one you did at the start of the game. Next is the best order setting. Here you can set your preferred best team that will play each game. If a player who's set in the starting lineup gets sent down to the minors due to an injury, they'll automatically return to their position when they recover. You're able to set 1 pitching and 2 fielder best orders. By default, best order 1 is used in games where the opponent's starting pitcher is right-handed, and order 2 is against left-handed pitchers. If you only ever change the pitcher or fielder registration and don't copy it to the best order, then the team will revert back to the best order state the next day, so do pay attention. Settings such as whether to use the best order can also be changed in the order thinking settings. Much like the player registration at the start, each fielding order has 2 selections, one with a DH and one without. Unless changed from the default, teams can only have 5 foreign players in the first team, with a maximum of 3 pitchers and 3 fielders. These players are indicated with an orange line under their name. Do note though that once players become free agents, it will no longer be subject to the foreign player quota. By using the best order, you can also create a 2-way player by setting the pitcher as a starter and then in the fielding order as well. It will then automatically register the player based on situations and fatigue, where they'll be switching between pitching, resting and playing as a fielder, though the player will need high fatigue recovery abilities. Next are the practice settings, and here you can set the type of practices the players will take every day. Basic training will improve basic abilities, and anything that is effective will be marked with a red up arrow. Special training is used for training special abilities, which will fill an experience bar. When full, the player will acquire the ability. The effectiveness of training varies from player to player depending on their developmental stage, characteristics, and current ability rank. Any stat that does not have an up arrow indicates that the training has no effect. A yellow arrow will sometimes appear next to the red, which indicates the training is being influenced by the manager or coach, which will result in a greater effect. When abilities begin to decline as the player gets older, training will not improve these abilities, but will slow down the rate of the decline. There are also special training programs that may be available if you have good coaches. You can set all of this manually, or you can auto-train, which will let the players train according to their abilities, but will only improve their basic ones. Here on the screen you can see a list for all the training for pitchers and also all the training for fielders. All the special abilities are actually the same ones that you can find in the Hakyu no Kiseki mode. These have already been detailed in a spreadsheet made by Poppo, so I'll link that in the description below. You can set the training based on the positions, or you can set for each player manually. You can freely change the computer's practice settings as well, but if auto was set in practice settings under dependent race settings, it may change the choice for them automatically. Next you have the training policy settings. Here you can set how to train and develop upcoming promising players. By setting a training policy for a player here, they will get increased experience points towards their abilities for the corresponding training. You can set pitching and fielder policies with the available players from the right hand side. By selecting an empty slot, you can see how a player will get the bonuses with the arrows on their stats screen, so any young or upcoming players will greatly benefit from the extra experience. Next you have the human resources training policy. This is where you can change settings for the computer teams regarding trades, drafts and other team matters. You'll be able to set things like how players are acquired through free agency, drafts and foreign player acquisitions. For most of them you can either leave it as default, or you can let the computer be more proactive and stop them from taking any action whatsoever. For the contract renewals, you can also specify if the team will focus on certain aspects such as age, ability and other factors. If you do choose to make any changes and you want them applied to all the other teams, then you can always hit the copy button at the top, which will save you having to go through each team manually. Next is the order thinking policy. Here you can set the best order and set player substitutions for the first and second teams. Once you decide on the best order, it will try and keep that lineup at all times. You'll also be able to set whether players automatically switch between the first and second teams, along with what to do if an injury occurs. These settings will apply regardless of whether you're using normal progress or skipping in a schedule. You're able to set policies for both your pitching and your fielding lineups. The pitcher and fielder settings share most of the same options, with the fielder settings have some slight variances. Next is the team policy settings. These are the settings the computer will apply if you choose not to play a game yourself. You can change things like when to steal or to bunt, to what lineup and any substitutions that will be made during the game. Most of these are the same settings which I've covered in the Hakyu no Kiseki mode, but the top two allow you to set how players are selected, the top being based on ability and condition and the second being based on pitching matchups. The next button is your staff confirmation, and this just allows you to check your staff that you selected at the start of the game. Finally, you have the player ability confirmation, and this just allows you to go over your player abilities and stats. The next set of options is all about human resources, and it's where you can do things like make trades, scout for players and dismiss players. At the top is new foreign reinforcement. Here you can discover new foreign players by scouting. The deadline for doing this during the season is the 31st of July. You can specify the conditions for candidates using the top button, or check current candidates using the bottom one. Depending on the conditions you set, you may not find any players, so keep that in mind when scouting. The higher your overseas scout's discovery ability is, the shorter the amount of days it will take to find a target, and the higher their investigation ability is, the more detailed the results of the player's abilities will be. Once the deadline passes, you won't be able to search anymore until the new season begins, and all the candidates that you did find will also disappear. At the top you can choose what position you're looking for, and underneath that is choosing their batting hand. The next three are special features. Depending on if you specified a position or not, you'll see things such as power hitting, fastball speed and other preferred talents. If you choose to look for a pitcher, the second feature will be what type of pitcher would you like, from a starter, from the bullpen or a relief. Lastly is about signing bonuses and salaries, where you can set to search within certain price ranges. Once you're happy with your search criteria, then you'll just have to progress through the game. Depending on your scout's abilities, you may or may not find some players, but if you do, you'll find any suitable candidates in the candidates list. Here you can see all the stats of the player that was researched. You're also able to see what their contract value is. Any player that has a little orange box under their profile picture is a reincarnation of another player. If you'd like to sign a player, then all you need to do is select them and hit OK to add them to your team. Next is the draft player discovery. This is like the foreign player scouting, but here you'll be searching for domestic players instead. These players, however, will be appearing in the draft near the end of the year, so here's an opportunity to learn more about their abilities and talents. Again, the higher the scout's abilities, the less time and more detailed the reports will be. If your investigation ability is low, even with a rate of 100%, you still won't be able to fully see the player's abilities. After finding potential players, you can move on to researching them, which will uncover more details about that player that you're interested in. There are also rare cases that players that are acquired will have a higher star rating after being drafted. Again, you've got different criteria that you can search for. The top button this time allows you to set a birthplace. Underneath that you can then choose the player's position. Underneath that you can then select a dominant arm for pitchers or their batting hand for fielders. If you search for a pitcher, you'll be able to look for two features: their place in the pitching lineup and any specific abilities. For fielders you can only search for things like their power, whether they're good at defense and other options. Finally is their current career, whether you want to look for a high schooler, a university player, a member of society or not specifying one. As you progress, your scout may or may not find players depending on your criteria. If they do happen to find one, then they'll be added to the candidate list. Here you'll see all the current players which you can research further. Most of that information will be blank until you start investigating them though. You're only able to investigate one player at a time, and the research will increase as you advance through the days. If you see some yellow text underneath a player's profile picture, then this may indicate things such as their number one in that position or titles that they currently have based on their performance. Next to their name, you can also see their current and projected status. If the space is blank or empty, then it's normal. If there's a triangle, then it's okay. A single circle is good, and a double circle is perfect. Any player that has an orange box under their profile picture is again a reincarnation of another player. All these players, along with others that you haven't scouted, will be available during the draft at the end of the season. You're also able to add in original players into the draft if you wish to do so, such as created players along with any player from the Haku no Kiseki mode. During the draft, each round you can select a player to try and acquire. If no other team selects your chosen player during the round, then you'll get them. But if even one other team chooses the same player, then you'll go into a lottery to see if you get that player. The draft will end if you decide that you're done drafting or once all rounds are finished. You can only keep drafting if you have enough space in your squad. If your team is full, you can press square to go to the free agent screen, where you're able to make room by releasing players. The next option is for trades. Here you can request to make a trade with other teams. The deadline for trades is the 31st of July as well. Once you pick a team you'd like to trade with, you can then set up to 3 players on both sides along with any monetary offers. You'll see the results of trades as you progress throughout the schedule. The higher the rate, the closer the bars will be towards filling each side with the phone icons. Next you have the original player registration. Here you can add created players along with overseas managers and coaches as players to your team. When joining a team using a player created in Spirits mode, their years of being a professional will stay the same, but their birth year will change depending on the year they join the team. If a player is not yet 18 when they join, their age will also be 1 year younger. Overseas players, managers and coaches registered as players will also maintain their age, but their birth year will also change depending on the year they join the team, and they'll also join from their first year as being a professional. The best thing about this is that you don't have to unlock the players in the prospect shop if you'd like to use any of these players. Next is the player transfer history, and here you can see all the trades and transfers every team has done currently about real players. Finally is free contract. Here you can select players from the minor league to remove. Any player that you do remove can't be brought back. If there's a player on the first team you'd like to remove, then you need to send them down to the second team first. As your team can only have a set amount of total players in your organisation, this is where you're able to get rid of any unwanted players to free up space for new ones. You're able to flip through the tabs to bring up different sets of information such as age, current salary and their current record, so you can make your decisions easier. The next set of options is the memorial, and here you can check records and stats for every team, ranging from season records to all-time records. These are all the same as the ones found in star player mode, so if you'd like more info, then I'd highly suggest watching that video. Finally you have the system options. Here are all the other options and settings that aren't directly involving teams. At the top you're able to save your game. Next you have the option settings, and this brings up a list of other settings, many of which you were able to set at the start of the game. I've already covered a lot of these already in this video, but there are a couple that are new here. The evaluation settings allow you to change the magnitude of various evaluations that relate to things such as player salaries or titles. Moving the sliders left make it less important, and right more towards the option you've chosen. If you'd like a more detailed description, then again I've gone over it in the Star Player video. Next you've got the scheduled digest settings. Here you can change some settings when using the skip schedule feature. You have the option of either leaving it as default, or you can create some custom settings for the pennant race and the postseason, along with some optional criteria on the third option. Data settings allows you to change things like equipment, cheer songs and other options. And again, most of these have been covered in Star Player. Next is items. You're given 3 options here. At the top you can choose to use any consumables that you already have. Underneath you're able to purchase any consumables using VP that you'd like to gain. For most options there are small and large versions of them, and here's a full list of them on screen. The third button allows you to use items to adjust the abilities of real players. You can use these items regardless of whether you have set player growth or decline to be on or off. Selecting a player will bring up a list of items that can be used one time per player to either increase or decrease that player's abilities. There's a lot of items to choose from, and it's quite easy to modify someone into an amazing player, so if that's something that interests you, you may have some fun improving your team while decreasing your opponents. Next you have the play record. Here it just shows you various records of your team accomplishments, which will get filled out more as you play. Next you have background music, which just allows you to change the music that you'll hear throughout the game. You have the help button, which will bring up all the help tutorials, but they're all in Japanese. And finally you just have the end button, which will allow you to quit the game. With all that explained, you can now finally continue on to playing the game. When you hit the next button, you'll be given 3 options. You can either go straight to the match, or you can change the scheduled digest and match digest settings. Going to the match will let you change your lineup before the game as well, if you need to do so. There are 6 options for playing the game, many of which have been explained in the Hack no Kiseki mode and other videos. After games you'll see an update to records that players may have achieved and news from around the league of the other teams. You'll also see your pitch rotation and how their stamina and fatigue levels are doing in case you need to make any changes back on the main menu. You'll continue to cycle throughout the whole season, aiming to be in the top 3, all while making trades, setting training and practice options, and managing the rest of your players. Throughout the season though, you may run into events such as injuries or offers from other teams, along with searching and researching draft picks. Regardless of whether you win the Japan series or not, during winter you'll then begin negotiations for free agents. Here you'll see a list of all the players that have exercised their free rights as agents that later on you'll be able to make offers on. After that, you'll be asked if you wish to continue playing as the same team, or you can also change to a different team if you'd like to do so. You'll then be able to assign your staff again for the year if you wish to make any changes, after which you'll be brought back to the player contract screen. Here you'll see your entire squad with their current contracts, where you can agree to new terms for any players that may need renewing. You can either keep it as it is, which will match the player's desired amount for their annual salary, or you can make them an offer yourself. You have options to offer single and multi-year contracts, as well as delaying retirements or even offering staff positions to players as well. Next you'll see retiring players from among the league, and after that teams will announce any changes to their staff. After all of that, then the draft will begin in December. After the draft you'll finally come to the free agency negotiation screen. The top 3 players that are available will be ranked A, and the 4 to 10 picks will be ranked between B and C. You can make up to 2 offers for any players in the A or the B ranks. Should players swap teams, those organisations will receive compensation, whether it be money or players. You can acquire as many C-rank players as you wish for no compensation though. After negotiations, you'll see the free agency compensation screen should you have any players that qualify, where you can choose available players from the team that acquired your player. Next you'll see the foreign reinforcement signings for you and any teams that have acquired new players. Finally, you can negotiate with free agents should you wish to acquire them. You can either match their offer or offer them a completely different deal. After all the negotiations, you'll then see players who have entered the Hall of Fame. With that all done, spring training will roll around again, and here you can set new training and practice settings for your squad. Players will increase their abilities far higher during spring training, so it's a good chance to work on areas you wish to improve quickly. You're able to choose a location for spring training if you have the funds, with better results coming from the more expensive options. With spring training done, you'll be back to the start of the season where you'll start all over again. During certain years, the WBC will take place before the start of the season, where you're able to take control of the Japanese national team and compete for the cup. And that's just a brief overview of the season mode. There's a lot that you can do here, so if you do want to be in complete control of the team, then this is probably the mode for you. Again, thank you to Poppo for creating the Google Doc with all of the special training modes for the Hack no Kiseki that can be used in this version as well. But with this guide done, that's basically all the main modes of Professional Baseball Spirits 2024-2025 covered. If you found this guide or any of my others helpful, then you can always tip me on Ko-fi. But I hope this guide helps out anyone that wishes to play Season Mode. So thanks for watching, leave a comment below if you've got any other questions, and I'll catch you on the next one.